Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live streaming. I appreciate you all, guys, whether you're watching me on YouTube or on Rumble. I was on Larry Johnson's YouTube channel just like an hour ago. We have done a brilliant conversation together on the current events in the Middle East, West Asia, Syria, Israel, Palestine, and Ukraine as well. I will try to repost this video when he publishes it on Syriana Analysis. However, today I prepared this stream for you about the American fresh sanctions against the what they call the Russian state TV channels and banning them from operating in the United States. I just want to check. Yeah, okay. So now the viewers are coming up. I just thought like there are zero viewers on this stream. I thought there was some technical problem. While I was preparing this live streaming, the intention was to speak about the fresh sanctions against the Russian outlets and the why they are imposing these sanctions and what it means for the future. However, I had the breaking news just 30 minutes before this live streaming. And the breaking news is that the Lebanese militant group fighting against Israel, Hezbollah, they have imported, apparently, a few months ago or a year ago or two, I don't know, some Motorola walkie-talkies. I don't know if they're called pagers. And apparently Israel penetrated these pagers and conducted a cyber attack against these pagers, and all these pager small like a phone calls for the internal communication between Hezbollah members have exploded. I watched videos of hundreds of Hezbollah fighters have fallen between injuries. I don't know if there are any killed among them, but among the injured is the ambassador of Iran to Lebanon. He is also injured. This is a breaking news, guys, just 30 minutes before the stream. I don't have more details about it. Therefore, tomorrow's live streaming and conversation probably is going to be, it's not probably, certainly is going to be about this case. And we are going to go thoroughly and check what happened in Lebanon. I think this is a very dangerous cyber attack against Hezbollah and the successful one by the Israeli side. So what it means, are we headed to a regional war? Are we headed to an all-out war? All these questions we're going to address tomorrow. So definitely stay tuned and subscribe to the channel to not miss. I will try to host someone, whether from Beirut, where the attacks happened, or an expert on Hezbollah. So let's see tomorrow about this case. But while we're speaking about it, the reporting about this case, there is, of course, lots of talk now on social media, on the mainstream media, on alternative media. Everybody is speaking about it if you go to your platforms and check. But today's stream is going to be about the importance of the media. I was not alive when hundreds of years ago there were empires, but all the empires, they had their minders, they had their people, they had the intellectuals among their ranks to convince the people about the accuracy and the dignity of the ruling elite, the ruling family, and how important it is to follow the decisions of the ruling elite, and also how important it is to fight for the ruling elite, for the king, for the queen, for the better good of your society, etc. So there was always an attempt to control the narrative. It's important. You have to tell a story to your people why you're going to war hundreds of kilometers, thousands of kilometers away to fight against an enemy. I'm sure Genghis Khan had a way to convince his people to march to the west thousands and thousands and thousands of miles, one of the biggest empires ever lived in the history, to conquer these territories. So it's not enough to recruit soldiers, it's also important to convince the people. And today in 2024, the situation is not really different. It's almost the same. Nowadays, we have media outlets, unfortunately, corporate media outlets embedded with the military contractors, embedded with pharma, embedded with billionaires, embedded with corporations, and these people have invested interests. And above them or below them, we have also the politicians who are taking decisions to take us to wars. Taking decisions to give certain types of weaponry to Ukraine, giving weapons to Israel, or all these operations happening around the world. There are people taking decisions. So there is always an attempt to convince the people, right? You have to present them a story. And when this story is not consistent enough, or if your enemy is capable of destabilizing this narrative and finding holes in it, and especially if your enemy is able to find holes or destabilize your narrative within and among your own people, this is the biggest threat, in my opinion, to the narrative and hence to the decision making. So in this case, we remember like the CNN, the BBC, Fox, MSNBC, everyone has its own approaches, right? For the American audience, for the British audience, etc., including in Germany. We have mainstream media outlets here. However, what the adversaries of these countries or governments, let's say, like in Russia, China, Iran, have done, they have copied their media approach, which is to, okay, if the CNN has to have an Arabic outlet for the directed to the Arabic audiences, then we could also have a Russia Today for the Arabic audience. We could have a Russia Today for the American audience. We could have a Sputnik for the Indian audience. The Chinese are the same. CGTN in English, other Shanghai Daily, many other outlets. It's either in English, in Arabic, in Hindu, in many other languages, because the purpose is to spread the message. The purpose is to tell the people what your country believes and what is best for your own country. Everybody is serving their own interests. I'm not here coming and selling you the illusion that Russia Today doesn't have any invested interest, for example, in Europe, or invested interest in the United States. No, everyone has an invested interest. But to my knowledge at least, Russia Today, Sputnik, and other Russian and Chinese channels, they didn't lie to the entire world about Iraq war. They didn't lie them about Afghanistan war. They didn't lie them about the Syrian war or the Iraq war, etc., etc. The recent ones, right? After the establishment of these TV channels. Now, recently, Russia Today and Sputnik and other Russian, let's say, state-affiliated TV channels and outlets, they have gained momentum among the American people because Americans increasingly started to feel sick and tired of the U.S. wars and expansionist wars of choice outside the U.S., and especially the big expenditure, $1 trillion per year on its defense budget, and establishing over 800 let's say, bases around the world. So the people were like, oh, let's invest in our infrastructure, build houses, build bridges, have an insurance, for example, health insurance, this and that, right? Education, free healthcare, this stuff. So what the Russia Today did, basically, they capitalized on the voices. Those are legitimate concerns by the American people, right? So they capitalized on them. So they increased the I would say, the negative sentiments of the American people against their own government, which is supposed to serve them, but they don't serve them. So they have found a hole to try to tell the people in the United States that your government is just messing around and they're not taking care of you. So better maybe they should care about you. This reporting, it's normal for me, right? Americans do it, Russians do it, Chinese do it, Indians do it, Brazilians. Everybody has similar media tactics. Probably some of them are more sophisticated than others, but everybody is trying to control the narrative. However, with the spawn of the social media, people have started to find like, I don't have to turn on my TV. It's in my mobile. I can read a newspaper here. I can read the New York Times, the Washington Post on my mobile or on my laptop. And then it developed to, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, etc., etc. Everybody started to just watch a 1-minute video and learn what's happening there, or watching longer format videos like Syriana Analysis to try to learn what's happening around the world. And people started to wake up to the fact that not everything they say in the press or in the media is accurate, and especially when it comes to the bigger issues, important issues, geopolitical conflicts around the world. So people started to resort to citizen journalists, people who have no interest in lying or telling half-truth. For example, Syriana Analysis is funded by the people who watch this channel. So I'm not limited to the funding or what the funders say or the donors say or the investors say, because I don't have any. You are the ones paying for me. Therefore, I'm independent and I don't have to be abided by the guidance and the instructions, editorial guidelines, etc., of the investors, potential investors, which I don't have, right? So this is the situation. This situation has increasingly shaped the public opinion in the US, in the European countries. But in my opinion, the bigger shift started when people voted for Brexit and people voted for Trump. And I'm not a supporter of Trump, but Trump was a phenomena, and he came from a place where everybody didn't want him to come, right? Like they didn't want in the US, the establishment, the intelligence agencies, the deep state, the military, they didn't want for Trump to come power. He came. And this was the turning point for them that Trump has used social media also to mobilize his people for voting for him and following his orders or accepting his policies, etc. So they have to limit now this. They started shadow banning, deplatforming, restricting people. And when Elon Musk took over X and published the communications, you see that the FBI, they had their regular meetings with the staff of Twitter. And the same thing happens with Facebook. The same thing happens with YouTube. It happens with TikTok, probably. I don't know. All the social media outlets are now under immense pressure by the governments or by these, non-governmental actors, people who have big influence over the governments, over the politicians, to censor our speech and censor the information that we post on social media platforms. And in parallel, this applies also on the Russian channels. The Russian channels have their platforms on social media platforms, and now the US, after imposing sanctions on or banning the Russian channels in the US, Europe, and on social media, for example, I cannot now open and read for Russia Today because it's banned in Germany. I cannot see what they're posting on X or on Facebook or Instagram. I cannot see what the Russians are saying. But this is dangerous because the people now, they don't know what the Russians say about the Ukraine war. And they don't know what Putin says about setting the red lines and what is his red line, what could supplying Ukraine with long-range missile means, this and that, right? So people are ignorant, let's say, and unaware of the Russian perspective, and they are unaware of what the Russians say. And in this case, now with these newer sanctions, I have read the comment today on X. I think he said like this new sanctions against the Russian outlets is a pre-phase of controlling the narrative completely when World War III erupts. So God forbid if there is a World War III and you live in Germany, which would be part of the World War III against Russia, or could, I don't know, Britain or the US or France, then you don't know what the other side says, right? You only follow your mainstream narratives. That's why it's very dangerous to have channels like Russia Today having a reach in the US or in Germany or among the Western people. Now, this article is from NPR, which is a mainstream outlet. So just for you to know, before I read you the news, because it's important to let you know that NPR is a mainstream, so their wordings and their language is against Russia. So the United States hits Russian state media with new sanctions. The U.S. State Department announced new sanctions on Russian state media Friday, accusing a Kremlin news outlet of working hand in hand with the Russian military and running fundraising campaigns to pay for sniper rifles, body armor, and other equipment for soldiers fighting in Ukraine. So they're not only spreading propaganda, according to the US, but they're also running fundraising campaigns in order to pay for sniper rifles, body armor, and other equipment. So they are saying basically that Russia Today is funding campaigns or raising fundraising campaigns to buy military equipments, which are used in Ukraine. While the outlet RT has previously been sanctioned for its work to spread Kremlin propaganda and disinformation, the new allegations suggest its role goes far beyond influence operations. Instead, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said RT is a key part of Russia's war machine and its efforts to undermine its democratic adversaries. And this is something that I realized recently, that increasing number of Western politicians say that, oh, we are targeting this, and it's not, we're targeting this newspaper or this media outlet, and it doesn't violate our principle of respecting and protecting and championing freedom of press, because this news outlet is challenging or undermining our democracy and our democratic values. So they are the opposite of democracy, so they are autocratic. Therefore, we have to ban them and we have to suspend them, and the people cannot hear their voices. RT has also created websites posing as legitimate news sites to spread disinformation and propaganda in Europe, Africa, South America, and elsewhere, officials said. And this is the same thing that the Americans do with their TV channels. They have all their outlets. They are in multiple languages. If it's in Africa, if it's in Canada, if it's in, let's say, the Arabic world, or in India, every single one of them are speaking different languages because they want to reach the people there, right? This is the same thing that the Americans do, basically. So the crowdsourcing effort ran on Russian social media platforms and seek to raise funds for military supplies, some of which were procured in China, officials said. So they're also involving China in this, saying that the Russians are buying military equipment from Russia through these fundraising campaigns. The list of supplies also include night vision equipment, drones, radios, and generators. Artists' actions show, quote, it is not just a firehouse of disinformation, but a fully fledged member of the intelligence apparatus and operation of the Russian government. Who said this? Jamie Rubin. He is heading the State Department's Global Engagement Center. So Russia's global propaganda work is receiving extra scrutiny in the months leading up to the US election. I think everything has been said before this was just a crap. The main issue is this, as we say in Arabic, the butter of the issue. Russia's global propaganda work is receiving extra scrutiny in the months leading up to the US elections because, I'm not going to lie to you. If you're a Russian politician and you're in the Kremlin or you Putin, of course you would prefer Donald Trump, right? They're mocking when they say they endorse Kamala Harris, but they would prefer Donald Trump because he wants to take one step back from this nuclear Armageddon, basically. Some people say, why does he want to do that? I mean, he says that he's going to do it. And I think for Trump, he believes in reverse Kissinger strategy, and that is making friends with Russia and drawing a vertical line, or trying to divide the relationship or weaken the relationship between China and Russia, something that I think he will fail. I don't know. Like he thinks that pivoting to the Pacific, to China, is more important. He thinks that China is a greater threat. He thinks that Iran is a greater threat in West Asia or in the Middle East against Israel. He has other priorities. Basically, the Russians would be happy if Trump comes to power. So, of course, the reporting would be more in favor of Trump. This is normal, right? But they're so afraid that Trump will come to power in this year. And yeah, I'm, as I always say, I'm not a supporter of Trump, but they don't want him to come. It's quite obvious for me that they are working against Trump's second coming to power. So this summer, intelligence officials warned that Russia was using unwitting Americans to spread its propaganda by disguising it in English on sites popular with Americans. Officials say Russia seeks to divide Americans ahead of the election as a way of reducing support for Ukraine. Russia's influence operations also appear designed to support former President Donald Trump, who has criticized Ukraine and NATO alliance while praising Russian. This is it. This is the entire issue. Today, as I mentioned at the beginning of this stream, that I was hosted by Larry Johnson, a former CIA operative. And I think this was this week. Some mainstream media outlet published a hit piece against him, calling him a Russian agent and working for the Russian intelligence, this and that. So this is the normal now. This is the new normal. Like, if you have a different opinion, you're a Russian agent, you're an Assad agent, you're a Xi Jinping agent. Like, if you work for RT, you are criminal if you work for any Russian outlet, and you could be also criminalized. So it's really difficult nowadays for journalists who want to work for Russian outlets, for example, to continue working in the US or in other European countries. Now, similar attempts have been done against Sputnik now in India, but because they cannot really ban India from hosting Russia or Russia Today or Sputnik, the the American embassy in New Delhi, they're calling some of the researchers, people who work in think tanks in Delhi, and encouraging them not to appear on Sputnik and Russia Today and other Russian channels, because they say that by doing so, you are participating in, you're giving the credibility for Sputnik and for Russia Today. I'm not going to read all this article to you. It's just something I found on Twitter today, exposed the US Embassy intimidation campaign against Sputnik. Two Indian think tankers told Sputnik, India, they have been warned against giving interviews to Sputnik and other Russian media at the behest of the US Embassy in New Delhi. In one case, the call came directly from a US Embassy staffer. So they're calling people working for think tanks and telling them not to participate in Sputnik radio or Sputnik podcasts because, a US Embassy staffer directly approached me asking not to give interviews to Sputnik. I asked him if it was that serious a matter. He replied, yes, stated an expert affiliated with a New Delhi-based think tank. So they're doing everything in their capacity now to ban the Russian outlets and also to discourage the people from participating in any conversations about the Ukraine war, the geopolitical conflicts between Russia and the United States on Russian outlets, because this will undermine the narrative. So it is a war of narrative. Now, you would think that they may have a limit for, like suppression, shadow banning, uh, completely deplatforming and banning and sanctioning people, this and that. But no, they really want to go further. They really want to push further. And this is Hillary Clinton, by the way. Before I show you this video, I think that this video is completely suppressed by YouTube because we're speaking about American affairs, and they're really afraid of us talking about the American affairs before the election. So they're really suppressing the viewership of this stream, as far as I see from the number of the people watching it. So if you're watching this, and I just kindly ask you to hit the like button while you're watching this stream, and it will increase the viewership, and it will be shown to more people on their feed when they log into their YouTube account. I'd be very appreciative if you would do that, guys. So this is Hillary Clinton. She doesn't only want to ban Russia Today or impose sanctions on Russian outlets. She says that she's suggesting jailing Americans for posting misinformation. And she says there needs to be a deterrence. So what is deterrence in her mind? I will play the video for you. Just a second. Yes. So take a look what Hillary Clinton has to say.
And boosting Trump back in 2016. But I also think there are Americans who are engaged in this kind of propaganda. And whether they should be civilly or even in some cases criminally charged is something that would be a better deterrence because.
So, according to Hillary Clinton, there are American citizens spreading misinformation, and this is, of course, helping Trump in her mind. And she is suggesting that there would be civil or criminal charges against them. So, what does that mean? Let's take a look again.
And boosting Trump back in 2016, but I also think there are Americans who are engaged in this kind of propaganda. And whether they should be civilly or even in some cases criminally charged is something that would be a better deterrence because.
So she wants to civilly and criminally charge American citizens. We're not speaking of journalists now, ordinary people. You watching this, if you go to your Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and post something that is considered disinformation and boosting the chances of Trump, then she's suggesting to press charges against you as a deterrence. So before you post on social media, you have to think about it. So this is something that reminded me of what Ursula von der Leyen a few months back said about immunizing the people against misinformation and disinformation. She wants to give them the truth, chuk chuk here, and truth vax. So how does she want to do that? She wants for the people to think before posting on social media. She wants to immunize them against misinformation and disinformation. This is so dystopian, you know? I mean, I'm very much I'm very liberal in when it comes to freedom of press and freedom of speech. I want you to tell me your mind, even if I disagree with you 180 degrees. And it won't shake my convictions, because my convictions are not fragile. My convictions are based on years and years and years of experience in media, journalism, politics, and personal experiences, because I come from a war-torn country. So if you come and tell me, like, in one sentence, you're completely talking crap about Syria, I don't believe you, and you're from somewhere, let's say, I don't know, at the end of the world, on the western coast of the United States, for example, and I'm like, how do you know? What do you know about this? I know better than you, so it doesn't shake my convictions. But because these establishment people, they're aware that their narratives have been based on half truths sometimes, and sometimes on big fat lies. Therefore, when you tell the people the truth, the people can grasp the truth. They can feel it. So after a year, 2, 3, and with the track record that you establish, and the people start realizing that, oh, Kevork is telling the truth, or he's not lying to us, and I have been watching him for 7 years, he has established a track record, so he has a credibility. Then they go and see, like, oh, Hillary Clinton, she lied about Afghanistan, she lied about I mean, she was not official back then. When she speaks about Afghanistan, she keeps still lying about it, what happened in the 80s. She lied about 9/11. She lied about Iraq. She lied about Lebanon. She lied about Palestine. She lied about Iraq. She lied about Libya. She lied about Syria. She's still lying about Ukraine. She has a track record of lying. So when she comes now and tells you, please vote for Kamala Harris, I mean, people still remember that she has a track record of lying. So her words doesn't have much of a credibility. Therefore, when the Russian narrative comes or alternative narrative comes, they feel it as a threat. They see it as a threat because their convictions are fragile. It's not based on solid arguments, because they themselves do not enjoy credibility in front of their own people. Among the Americans nowadays, like if you bring the name of Dick Cheney, for example, Dick Cheney endorsed Hillary Clinton. It's like this should be like a counterproductive for Kamala Harris, right? This should harm Kamala Harris's campaign and not to help it. Just to know, just my thought. I don't know if you're an American. Let me know your opinions. And speaking of Kamala is not better than, by the way, Hillary. She's from the same school. And this is Hillary. This is Kamala. She says, if Afshin Ratansi says, if Kamala Harris becomes president of the United States, she will go on the attack against the last platform that enshrines free speech. He means X. I don't agree with him that is completely free speech, but it's way better than others. Let's see what she has to say about this. So let's take a look.
He has lost his privileges, and it should be taken down. And the bottom line is that you can't say that you have one rule for Facebook and you have a different rule for Twitter. The same rule has to apply, which is that there has to be a responsibility that is placed on these social media sites to understand their power. They are directly speaking to millions and millions of people without any level of oversight or regulation. And that has to stop.
So this has to stop. She means about X, about Elon Musk's X. And she truly thinks that X is speaking to us. In fact, we are speaking on X or on Twitter to the other people. It's not like X is manufacturing speech or narratives. We are posting narratives on X. So we are the ones. So what she means basically, she's really, I don't know, she's not the smartest, like X is not like an independent agency creating narratives. It's not BBC, it's not CNN, it's not New York Times, Washington Post. We are the ones posting on X and creating the narratives or pushing narratives or telling the people about certain stories. So what she basically says that we have to be mind controlled. There have to be people doing the mind control and the what they call content moderation, because content moderation is the fancy word of authoritarianism. If you really believe in free speech, why are you afraid of what I say? Because if your speech is based on truth, you're able to convince the other side or the people about your story. You don't need to suppress and do this, mind control and sugarcoat it with other words, because they're just changing the terminologies the way it suits them. So this is coming against Russian outlets. And I'm not like here to defend the Russian outlets, but I'm just explaining to you why they're doing it. Secondly, they started coming after social media platforms, also individuals working on social media, right? And I'm not going to read all this article to you, but just for you to know, this is a new article posted. The UK using terrorism law to silence journalists, protesters who commit quote speech crimes. And those are two examples. For example, here we have Sarah Wilkinson on the left and Richard Medhurst. Both were stopped under this what they call the terrorism law. And British police and prosecutors are relying on a recently adopted speech crime provision in terrorism legislation to target journalists, commentators, activists, and protesters. The crackdown accelerated after Israel launched its genocidal campaign against Palestinians following the Hamas attack on October 7, 2023. Among the most well-known examples of this crackdown is the case of British Syrian journalist and commentator Richard Medhurst. So this is the first known example of British authorities invoking Section 12, Clause 1A of the Terrorism Act from the year 2000 to justify arresting and interrogating journalists, which was passed in 2019 as part of the Counterterrorism and Border Security Act. So what is the Section 12, Clause 1A? 1. A person commits an offense if the person 1. Expresses an opinion or belief that is supportive of a proscribed organization, and 2. In doing so is reckless as to whether a person to whom the expression is directed will be encouraged to support a proscribed organization. So someone accused of this crime faces up to 6 months in prison if convicted at a magistrate's court, and up to 14 years in prison if convicted by a jury. Prosecutors do not have to prove that an individual expressed their opinions or beliefs with the intention of encouraging others to support a banned group, nor do they have to prove that anyone actually supported a banned group as a result of the accused opinions or beliefs. All that British authorities need to prove is that someone, through their expressed opinions or beliefs, was, quote, reckless enough that someone might think that they were encouraged to support a banned group. So in this case, if I'm making a YouTube stream now to you, and I was reckless enough to say something, and I'm not directly telling you to support, for example, Hamas, right? And I'm saying Hamas to manipulate the algorithm of YouTube. And I was reckless enough to say something against Israel that the UK government thinks that someone else would watch this and start supporting Hamas. Then I would be stopped and interrogated, and charges would be pressed against me, and I could end up between 6 months to 14 years in jail. Free speech, Habibi, free speech. Lots of free speech happening here. I'm very happy to live in the cradle of free speech. But not everything is black and white, right? It's also, there are some positive news about this. For example, I don't know if you know this guy, by the way. This is the EU Commissioner Thierry Breton, and he resigned recently. This piece of thing He 1 month after the EU disavowed comments by Commissioner Thierry Breton after he threatened to punish Elon Musk's X platform for a lack of censorship. He is now out. So he wrote the resignation letter. Breton was roundly chastised by the EU for suggesting that he would punish X if they don't immediately crack down on, quote, content that promotes hatred, disorder, incitement to violence, or certain instances of disinformation. On the same day that Elon Musk and Donald Trump had an unfiltered discussion on the platform, Musk responded appropriately. This is what Elon Musk told him. And, you can read it by yourself. I don't have to repeat it to you. But there are some cases that, alhamdulillah, as we say, it's not really, they're unable to go as far as they want to. But this is all thanks to the pushback. You have to know that we are the majority. We are the vast majority. We are hundreds of millions of people. If we say no, it won't pass. It won't happen. They only can pass laws and come after the people's personal freedoms, their rights for speech, this and that, only because the people submit. When the people collectively say no, it's not going to happen. Just a thought. But I'm going to show you a video now, just to tell you that some people are not really afraid to face consequences for what they say or for what they do. And some of them, they know their rights, they know the Constitution, so they exactly know how to respond when they are faced with intimidation. In this video, a person called Jeremy Kaufman, he's an American, apparently an activist with 135,000 followers on X, and he had the FBI paid a visit to him at his own home, just as this recently, yesterday or the day before. So the FBI visited my house today for free speech acts they knew were not crimes. You can see the shame on their faces. This is the democratic regime manifest, he says. So I'm going to show you the video on how he speaks to the officers and how he knows his rights and how he knows a lot about the American Constitution. And this is how he deals with the intimidation. Take a look.
Hey, how can I help you? Yeah.
How are you?
Who are you?
I'm Agent O'Donnell with the FBI.
Can you give your full name, please?
I'm Agent O'Donnell with the FBI.
Is that sufficient to identify as the only one O'Donnell affiliated with the FBI?
In New Hampshire, yes.
Could you please state your full name, sir?
Could you please stop recording?
No. It's First Amendment right.
Okay.
What's your name, sir?
Could you stop recording, please?
Absolutely not. You can show me your name and identification, or I'm going to go back inside my house.
Okay. I don't really want to broadcast my...
Oh, this is going out right after you guys walk away.
So that's why I'm not going to...
So you can show me your name or ID. You can walk away.
We just want to talk to
I'm not going to talk to people who claim to be federal agents unless they can show me identification.
you see our badges.
I need to see. Is your full name on that badge?
No.
I'd like to see something with your full name, or I'm not going to talk to you.
It's for you not to broadcast it.
This will be going online as soon as you walk away.
Well, all I want to do is talk to you about a post that was made, and if you
Well,
happen to be the one that made the
I want to
post,
talk to
He
you
wants to talk with him about a post he made on social media.
about you guys coming here. Say you make a salary of, I don't know what, low 100K. You guys making six figures? Factor in 50% expenses, overhead, maybe 100% expenses. Talking about burning a couple $100 an hour just here, let alone all the time you guys are spending to investigate something that you know is not against the law, right? Like
So
you're
not
familiar with.
saying it is,
So then why would you come?
Because we wanted to make sure that there weren't any other
No, you're
threats.
coming because you're part of a regime that does this kind of thing when you know laws aren't being broken. And that's an embarrassment, man. Didn't you guys read the Constitution? Do you not believe in America?
So
Like, how do you do your
thank you
jobs
for
and
your
go
time.
home?
We appreciate it.
You're walking away. Because nothing we did is against the law. And you guys are fuckheads that try to act like bullies. And I hope you go home and are embarrassed. You can't even say your name on camera because you know that what you're doing is embarrassing. You know Americans that believe in the Constitution think you're laughable. And you go home and you think about what you did today. Go home and think about it, you cowards. Drive away. Drive away.
Thank you for your time.
You're not welcome. You should be embarrassed. Embarrassing. You guys are embarrassing.
So, what do you think about this video? Do you think this is the proper way of dealing with such bullying? I mean, he managed himself quite well, and he knows his rights, and he knows what he has to ask and what to demand from the officers. So it is an act of intimidation. I don't know what he posted on X. Maybe I completely despise his opinion. I'm not aware of this guy, but I just showed you this example of how some people are basically dealing with bullying and this type of harassment. They came to his home to tell him, oh, we wanted to speak with you about the post you made. What do you want to speak about the post? Like, am I going to explain to you my opinion? Who are you? Why shall I explain what do I think about certain probably political or social issue to you? Who are you? It's like, it's good for him. Whether I agree with him or not, I don't know him personally or his opinions, and I didn't check. I just saw this video. It was hilarious, and I wanted to show it to you. And we're speaking in this environment because, the things are really boiling in the US, and with these alleged attempts against Donald Trump and the censoring on YouTube. It's amazing how YouTube is suppressing this content just because we're speaking about the US and the politics in the US. If you just joined this stream, I would be very happy and glad and appreciative if you just hit the like button while you're watching this stream. As we're speaking about the US and the alleged attempts against Trump, this is a new information that we learned today on the alleged would-be Trump assassin. And he said in a book that he looks forward to World War III. Ryan Wesley Routh, the 58-year-old man arrested on Sunday for allegedly trying to kill former President Donald Trump, said in a book he published himself in February 2023, so he published a book, that he looked forward to World War III and he hoped he could burn down the Kremlin. I'm going to quote what he believes. I do dream of the day that we cross over into Russia and march towards Moscow. That is the part of this Third World War that I look forward to. I want to be the one that burns down the Kremlin and all the cruelty that it signifies, Rouse wrote in the book titled Ukraine's Unwinnable War. He had some wet dreams, to be honest with you. He had some not nice, but he has some wet dreams about invading Russia, going to the Kremlin, burning down the Kremlin. And Third World III, it sounds like he was from the opposite side of World War II. He would have been on the side of, the guys who invaded Russia or Soviet Union. Maybe we're not allowed to even mention their names now because of YouTube suppressing this content. But the CNN did a brilliant job, guys. Brilliant job in covering this issue. And I'm sure you will be fascinated by this investigative work and analysis posted by the CNN. And they say, Ryan Rouse's support for Ukraine is a propaganda win for Moscow at a very tricky time for Kiev. It is exactly the kind of attention Ukraine didn't need. Since the start of clashes with Russia over its future in 2003, Ukraine has carefully avoided the sort of political violence Ryan Wesley Rouse is accused of. First of all, this is BS. Do you know how many times Ukraine has killed and assassinated journalists in Russia itself, including Daria Dugina, who had nothing to do with anything except giving podcasts and writing some articles. They killed her. They killed another Russian journalist. They killed many people, and they have a kill list about this. And now they come and tell us like, oh my God, Ukraine was so nice and cute in the past decade or two, and now this guy all of a sudden is harming the Ukraine cause. Yet now, at arguably the most crucial point of the conflict, Russia's vocal support for Kiev has somehow been seized upon by Russian echo chambers after he was detained on Sunday in connection with an apparent assassination attempt on former US President Donald Trump. Raus tried his best to associate himself with the fight against Russia, expressing support for Ukraine in dozens of X posts that year, saying he was willing to die in the fight and that we need to burn the Kremlin to the ground. Moscow's prolific echo chambers have begun to fashion a narrative in which US support for Ukraine is somehow extremist. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov asked what he thought about the assassination bid, said, according to Reuters, quote, "It is not us who should be thinking, it is the US intelligence services who should be thinking. In any case, playing with fire has its consequences," he said. So they're trying to really, to say that this is just an, lone wolf trying to harm the Ukraine cause. Although when he was recruiting all these militants to go to Ukraine from all around the world, including from Afghanistan, I'm sure he was watched by the intelligence secret services in the US, right? It's not like he was doing it individually. Of course, he had connections, people around him advising him what to do. But it is what it is, and we have to live with the fact that the press is able to twist anything and everything. So we have to be prepared for what could come next. And when you speak about next, Zelensky says that he is ready to win this war this time. He says 90%, his victory plan for the war is 90% complete, and he will present this to his Western allies next week. And he said this during a video address to the nation, that the military, political, diplomatic, and economic steps laid out in the plan would give Ukraine the strongest possible positions to ensure a real, just peace. While few details of Zelensky's plan have been disclosed, the Ukrainian president said in an interview with CNN earlier this month that it included 5 main points, among which were Ukraine's geopolitical place and security, economic support, and the freedom to use Western aid as it sees fit, and very strong military support. So let's see what this plan is about. But I can assure you that the political atmosphere, the people's mood is not in favor of prolonging this war and pushing for another delusional military campaign by Kiev government to win this war. People are really exhausted. I mean, financially, economically, people do not want for this war to be continued. And I'm happy to see that left-wing politicians like Sevim Dagdelen, she's from Zara Wagenknecht political coalition. I want to see more left-wing people opposing this war. I would really be happy to see more left-wing people being real left-wing people, basically. This is Sevim Dagdelen from Zara Wagenknecht coalition. It's a left-wing, anti-war, populist, conservative party, recently established. They have around 10% of the German people's admiration and voting, which is good. I support more left-wing parties joining an anti-war voices. And this is what she had to say. This was this week in the German Federal Parliament about sending more funding to Ukraine.
Wir debattieren heute den Haushalt für das Auswärtige Amt. Die Frage, die sich viele stellen in diesem Land, ist aber, ob dieses Geld vor allem an der Spitze gut angelegt ist. Wenn auch spät, hat sich das Bundeskanzleramt jetzt für Friedensverhandlungen mit Russland ausgesprochen. Aber was macht eigentlich das Auswärtige Amt? Da gibt es ein gravierendes Missverständnis. Die grüne Außenministerin Baerbock hält moralische Belehrungen gegenüber Indien oder Kanonenbootfahrten gegenüber China tatsächlich für Diplomatie. Von der US-Raketenstationierung in Deutschland hatten sie gleich gar keine Ahnung. Frau Baerbock, Sie kommen mit Ihrer gefährlichen Naivität inzwischen daher wie die Marie Antoinette der deutschen Außenpolitik. Diplomatie heißt für Sie, Frau Baerbock, Sie kürzen bei der humanitären Hilfe und der Krisenprävention und verteilen lieber weitere Waffen an die Ukraine, um die Atommacht, wie Sie sagten, zu ruinieren, egal was Ihre Wählerinnen und Wähler in Deutschland denken. Ja, das waren Ihre Worte. Und zum anderen unterstützen Sie die in Teilen rechtsextreme Regierung Netanyahu Weiterhin, obwohl bereits 40.000 Palästinenser getötet wurden. Die Hälfte davon Frauen und Kinder. Ihre sogenannte wertegebundene Außenpolitik ist eine blutige Farce,
Nice.
Frau Baerbock.
Nice. This is so good, man. I really love her. Like, I would love to have her on my show. And I think I will send her an email this week. I will send her an email. Maybe she would come to my show and we speak about these cases. I really love what she said, really, especially when it comes from this anti-war left-wing point of view. You know, I really love listening to such voices, and when it comes from a woman as well against her, because she claimed before and after she became in the coalition and in the ruling elite and became foreign minister of Germany, that her foreign policy is going to be a value-driven foreign policy, feminist foreign policy. And you see what sort of feminist and value-driven foreign policy she's pursuing in Ukraine, against China, against Russia, against Iran, against Palestinians. It's like, I don't know, it's like it sounds or looks more like a neocon policy, you know, just sugar-coated in some feminism and values, blah, blah, blah. So I think this was all for today, guys, in this live streaming. Tomorrow, we're going to cover a very important case, and that is going to be this recent cyber attack by Israel in Lebanon. Israel basically infiltrated or broke into the internal communication of Hezbollah. They had what is called pagers, these small devices for internal communication, and all of them exploded while they were in the pockets of Hezbollah, whether operatives or soldiers, including the ambassador of Iran in Lebanon. Very, very dangerous incident, very successful operation by Israel in Lebanon. I'm going to discuss this thoroughly tomorrow. I will contact now my friends in Lebanon, in Beirut, if they can participate and explain to us what happened. So definitely stay tuned for that and subscribe to the channel. And if they couldn't make it, I will definitely invite an expert on this issue to speak about it. So stay tuned for that, guys. That's going to be fascinating discussion about this very important cyber attack by Israel against the Lebanese Hezbollah. So this was all today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching this live streaming. Before leaving this stream, I would really appreciate it if you like this video and also become a patron. The link is scrolling on the screen, patreon.com/Syriana Analysis. When you become a patron, you support the independent journalistic work I am doing here. Thanks to you, I am independent. Therefore, I don't have a superior. I don't have anyone telling me what is the editorial line and what can I say and what can't I say. Therefore, all these thanks goes to you. So if you want to support this work, the link is scrolling on the screen, and we will see you tomorrow, 5 p.m. Central European Time, 11 a.m. Eastern American Time. Peace be upon you, upon your families. Salam.